Palantir keeps killing it right after earnings, adding so many deals with PRs and many more. Now, looking at the stock first, this probably is actually taking a lot of the attention this week. Palantir was dealing with the early week sell pressure, but immediately after earnings was able to recover as well and add on to the price to now being $30, which we haven't seen in years, honestly. Now, this price action is definitely a reflection of the overall market's perception of future growth for Palantir, and nothing wrong with that considering the positioning of Palantir that we see today, as well as their recent earnings, de-risking some of the doubts around Palantir, which we'll cover. Now, first though, right after earnings, we get a slew of analyst ratings and price targets taking into account the latest earnings. And we got to start with the mega Palantir bulls first. Wedbush's Dan Ives raised his already top price target of $35 to $38. Now, note this is his base case, and he does actually have a bull case of $50 that we heard about earlier this year, and really riding on the AI wave and market leading solution to actually operationalize AI for the enterprise. But not too far behind, we have another crowd favorite as well, Mariana from Bank of America, raising her price target from $28 recently into $30 finally. And I had a whole video covering her report as well, but essentially on paper, she is seeing proof of their growth now, especially around their government business, but also as the pick and shovels play of artificial intelligence, meaning even with the winners and losers of the AI gold rush, Palantir will, along for the whole ride, provide the infrastructure for the more speculative plays coming out, as also the winners here and that are actually going to need it going forward and leverage LLMs operationally and responsibly. But in addition to the bulls, we've got way more analyst two changes here, with Raymond James coming in at $30, DA Davidson also with a $28 price target. Citibank actually raised its price target to $30 after earnings, even though they raised it just before to $28. Now, Deutsche Bank, too, only at 21 in comparison, and even keeping a sell rating considering the current price today. But also even more bearish, we had Mona's Crespi Hard at $18, Goldman Sachs actually raising their price target down from 14 to 16. Now, do as you'd like with the bull and bear analyst price targets and ratings. The stock will do as it pleases, honestly, considering the overall market reflects the sentiment of Palantir, and on average, it seems to be much more positive. And it's looking that way for the moment, just considering overall, even if under the current price actions today, they're still raising their price targets. Then we get a few SEC filings, first with the continuation of selling off Rubicon shares as soon as possible, it seems, then also an insider sell that we didn't get a heads up on from last week with Alexander D. Moore, who sold off 20,000 shares, so it's a pretty small part. But in addition, we got our first big sale post earnings of Ryan Taylor selling 250,000 shares. Now, typically, we've seen the trading plan sell around earnings, so we'll keep an eye out for those when they come through, so I'll continue to monitor. And then we got a huge deal on the commercial end of things with Wendy's supply chain, actually. Now, for those familiar, they are a fast casual restaurant chain across the country, and a lot of their locations, they note 6,400, are in the United States and Canada. But the big deal here is that they will be utilizing Palantir to improve their supply chain operations out in two phases, with the ontology, of course, to get a singular common operating picture that we always hear about in all the latest deals, but also to leverage AI across many different functions of the organization and to eventually drive cost savings and efficiencies throughout the supply chain. Now, I did actually work there myself as a college job, as a crew member, and then a shift manager eventually. And really, what I saw on the ground floor were decisions being made by people, which I still think is important, did have a lot of variance at some fault too, but some also not where it's actually needed. Now, we'll observe over time in the long term how this plays out and if we get any updates from this deal. But being able to get a standardized solution over such a large amount of stores definitely can wrangle back in any outliers when it comes to, say, food waste and food quality, and it really does add up over time over that many stores. Then we get a big update in regards to the Titan contract for Palantir, who is set to deliver some prototype vehicles. They've actually delivered their first vehicle to a base in Washington State, and this is only months after getting the Phase 3 contract where they're the sole winner now. Now, it's important to note Palantir is the software portion of this hardware contract with multiple subcontractors and vendors. And the reason for this vehicle development, though, is just to get that full picture view, as mentioned, leveraging data from space, air, and land domains, while also being able to deeply utilize artificial intelligence accurately and securely. And for context, Palantir went through a couple trial phases to beat out the long-standing relationship of RTX with the government, which speaks volumes about the direction of the military wanting to go and getting this focus on software and ensuring the Titan prototypes are actually tested out on the field. Now, for an actual battlefield, that still remains to be seen, but with the first delivery, no doubt there will be some learnings and iterations for how future prototypes will go. Then we get a huge announcement of Palantir expanding their partnership with Microsoft. Now, on the Azure cloud infrastructure, essentially Palantir is now available for secret and top secret clearance. And within their own solutions, Palantir has already had this, but with the expansion, Palantir can now extend the functionalities of the government where Azure cloud has already been embedded and allows them to be utilized. In addition, this covers both IL5 and IL6 environments, where Palantir is able to prove that they are a valuable solution for leveraging AI among operators in the intelligence community. So, for me personally, I think this is a continuation as well as confirmation of Microsoft's relationship and was hinted at actually during their earnings, where they saw that huge increase in the API usage of their models as a service. Now, maybe they were referencing on the commercial end of things, but extending this to the government end at this level of security is another opportunity that Microsoft wants to leverage with Palantir. Now, some may say this is an uneven relationship with Microsoft taking the credit as an AI solution, but really I see it as Palantir getting a wider opportunity to scale and deliver where the implementation of Microsoft has already been done, so why do the work again? And even if the name recognition is not there for Palantir, the scaling opportunity seems to be advantageous if Microsoft doesn't try to build out their own kind of copycat or if they're even able to, but we'll see how this plays out over time. And then we just keep getting new deals. Palantir out in South Korea signed a Memorandum of Understanding or MOU with the company LIG Next One. They are a smaller defense company out in South Korea, but the purpose of Palantir is really to be the data infrastructure to leverage AI in autonomous surface vehicles. And Palantir is already working with another South Korean giant, Hyundai, on the autonomous sea vehicles and currently for their reconnaissance applications, but eventually for unmanned combat missions too as the end goal. And it won't be surprising if this is a similar path they want to take with this other South Korean company. So we'll continue to monitor since South Korea geographically sits at a quite troublesome spot if things go south with China and or North Korea. Palantir also keeps winning on US government deals too, and this is kind of related. They locked down another $8 million from the Air Force just awarded on Friday. They will be working for commercial AI mission control software and integration services to support the 7th Air Force and 607th AI Operations Command. The work will actually be out in South Korea, and they add this specifically, meaning that maybe geopolitically we're seeing something here in that sensitive area. But it seems that this is just a start, and it's only a 1 year contract for now, so we'll see if they expand this out later on. Now, earnings wise, this was the biggest news of the week, honestly, and kind of started everything with the price action, I'd say. I have a full video on the earnings recap covering all the metrics, but for the weekly video, we can go through the fast stuff. It's important to note the bigger narrative at play. First, revenue growth took over that forefront of everything in the headlines, as well as the market, in my opinion. They completely shattered their own guidance of around 22% year over year growth for the quarter, actually achieving 27%. This was totally unexpected by me, and in large part, there was great timing in deal making and payments from the US government that led to a 24% year over year growth rate for that line of business. But not only that, they continued to acquire US commercial customers and even saw an increase of US commercial revenue of 55%, and the number of US commercial customers up 83% year over year. But not everything is rosy in this arena, or at least the greatest it can be, as I pointed out that US commercial customers is actually technically less customers acquired the quarter versus the last two, with only gaining a little over 30. But that revenue narrative seemed to overshadow the small shortfall here. Now, guidance wise, though, they did do a slight increase for full year 2024 earnings, but for Q3, they are projecting out on the high end of around 25-26% year over year growth rate, which is still much better than the last time they provided that 22% projected, even if though it is smaller than the 27% currently that we just achieved. It kind of sets the market up for higher expectations because Palantir just seems to always exceed the expectations they've set, but we'll see how it actually goes next quarter. Considering they did warn us about US government revenue overperforming due to good timing, but there are also other bright spots like 114% net dollar retention, but also highlighting the big deal sign because, of boot camps, which I think was a mixed spot too still because they didn't release any specifics on conversions and only provided anecdotal evidence of some big deals being signed after the boot camps. But at scale, it remains to be proven or at least disclosed on how these are doing overall, but that can also just be a byproduct of the messiness of even coming up with metrics, since there's a mix of new and old customers, repeat organizations attending these boot camps, so it's not necessarily a simple one-to-one measurement to fully follow. But with all this information, earnings were taken positively by the market, and we saw this in the price reflected, and continues to show the narrative of Palantir playing out in my opinion. And I personally think this is the best earnings yet for Palantir, just because the return to growth seems to be proven and continuing, even if there is some flip-flopping between a lumpy growth rate on their US government revenue. But what are your thoughts below? And I'll see you in the next video.